Speaking of integrity, we now go from a very high standard to quite possibly, allegedly, a very low standard of integrity. Possibly, allegedly. And that is with the news that has been reported in the newspapers this month of four metal detectorists who each face up to 7 years in jail after allegedly uncovering a haul of Anglo-Saxon and Viking treasure and selling it on the black market. They are believed to have dug up the hoard of artefacts in Herefordshire in 2015, and all four of the men involved are accused of failing to declare it as treasure. Now, do you want to just sort of outline the context for this story?
Yeah, and in case people are wondering why you're putting so many allegedlys into the introduction there, it's because it's still a live court case. It's under consideration by the court, and
Allegedly.
therefore and therefore under UK law, we're not allowed to report anything except what was actually said in court
Yeah.
about the case itself until
Yeah.
the case is concluded. Otherwise, we could be up in front of the court ourselves
Yeah.
for contempt,
Yeah.
which none of us want to do.
No.
No, we are not. We are absolutely not in contempt of the court.
No.
In fact, we hold the court in absolute respect. Yeah, these four guys who are called George Powell, Leighton Davis, Paul Wells, and Simon Wicks. They actually come between them from South Wales and, in one case, Sussex.
Mm-hmm.
But the case actually relates to material that was allegedly dug up in Herefordshire in 2015. It was eligible to be reported, required to be reported under the Treasures Act, it's alleged, but it's alleged that they didn't then report it, and it is further alleged that some of it was then sold.
I see.
They were charged under the Treasures Act, but also under the Sale of Tainted Cultural Objects Act, which is a new one and we can come on to discuss.
Yeah.
The relics themselves, it includes gold and silver coins, a gold ring, an arm bracelet, and silver ingots.
Well, and also, wasn't there an element of crystal as well?
Yes.
Crystal
There's
sphere.
a crystal sphere, indeed.
Incredible,
Yes.
incredible.
Yeah.
For people in that situation, we're not talking about these guys. We're talking about people in that sort of situation.
In a hypothetical situation.
In a hypothetical situation.
A metal detectorist is in the countryside somewhere in England and finds objects which have a significant content of gold or silver, or more than 5 coins of gold or silver in association with say, for example, in a pottery object.
Yeah. If you're in
Based on Treasures Act 1996.
if you're in that situation, you are obliged by the Treasures Act 1996 or the Treasure Act, sorry, to report it to your local coroner
Within 2 weeks.
within 2 weeks as potential treasure, and there are related projects and institutions and protocols. For example, the Portable Antiquities Scheme.
That's the most famous example.
Yeah, whereby it is possible, as if you are the metal detectorist, possible to have that material essentially legitimately valued, and eventually maybe you might see half of the sale of that come back to you as the
Absolutely, yeah.
detectorist.
Under the Portable Antiquities Scheme, and again, it's a quirk of UK law about land ownership, and also about the ownership of valuables. There used to be something called treasure trove, where valuable objects belonged to the crown. That was a very blunt instrument. It dated back, I think, to the Middle Ages, and that was updated in 1996 to take more account, not as much as some archaeologists would have liked, perhaps, but more account of archaeological context and so on. And basically, if you declare something under the Treasures Act and it's found to be treasure, it's valued by an independent panel as to what it would be worth if, on an average day, if it was sold in an auction house. And then that find would normally be split 50-50 between the landowner and the finder.
Yeah,
That presupposes that the finder was acting with the permission of the landowner.
and and ideally, with the PAS, with the Portable Antiquities Scheme, there's also an element, an opportunity, rather, sorry, for archaeologists and historians to understand where that material came from, and therefore it's logged. People have a sense of the context, and so on and so forth.
That's right. For example, when it goes to panel, the panel is given a full report on the object and scientific tests and all the rest of it. So because all those things feed into the commercial value.
Exactly. Do you know, this is a really good primer for people, isn't it? Hopefully you guys are, appreciating
We are going to be
this.
asking questions at the end.
We will be. There'll be a test at the end. So ideally,
But
yes.
not about this case, because we can't talk about
No, we can't. Allegedly. So, yes. So they should ideally be bound by and be acting in accordance with the Treasure Act. But this application of Dealing in Cultural Objects Offences Act 2003 does mark a shift in gears, but in so much as the sentence can be greater, but also the actual application of that act to this type of incident really seems to be a deliberate attempt by the authorities to underline that people acting in this way, in a way which is often portrayed as a fairly innocent or a hobby, or TV series like, for example, Detectorists have certainly brought it to the fore in people's minds as being like that. But this really underlines that actually this sorts of behaviour is culturally sensitive, and that the state, by implication, will not tolerate people breaking the law. And if these guys, or if people in this sort of situation end up going to jail, then it sends a very strong message to those people who do go out of a weekend that they need to abide by the relevant laws, or if they are finding material of potential intrinsic value. Now, so we've taken what certainly on the Facebook page was a very emotive headline. People got very annoyed. They commented saying, "Yes, good. Thank goodness for that. Yeah, good on them for actually prosecuting these guys." And we boiled it down to a series of hypotheticals and applications of law. But just going back to, I suppose, impact, real world and cultural impact, what do you think this sort of application of the Dealing in Cultural Objects Offences Act 2003 might have on this sort of thing in the future? Is this actually a good gear shift in that sense?
Well, I think it has to be said that in these sorts of cases, Historic England, for example, works very closely with the Crown Prosecution Service to come up with appropriate charges that they think both are merited on the basis of the evidence that they believe they have, but also are CPS's tests in the public interest to prosecute, and can be prosecuted with a reasonable chance of success, and therefore wouldn't be throwing money at a lost cause, public money at a lost cause. So that would be the general background to any court case that those organisations were involved in. It is also the case.
So therefore, actually, to us, this is newsworthy because that decision, seemingly those tests have been met, and now it's proceeding to the next stage.
That's right. Yeah. So whatever the outcome of this case, the next part of the process is this is an ongoing case, which the next part of the process is a court review. I think at the moment is scheduled to be in March 2019, and it goes to a full trial in September 2019. So this has got almost a year to run yet. So at the moment we are only dealing with allegations and charges. They have not yet been decided by the court. But again, speaking hypothetically, the use of the Dealing in Cultural Objects Offences Act for any case involving cultural objects, but particularly with any case involving metal detectorists and cultural objects, does up the ante, because it associates illicit metal detecting by anybody, and again, it's allegations in this case, but it associates illicit metal detecting with the trafficking of cultural objects, for example, war zones in the Middle East, because that's what that piece of legislation was designed originally to deal with. It was designed to deal with objects that have been stolen in Egypt or Iraq or Libya or wherever, that were turning up with dodgy provenances in London auction rooms. That's what everybody thought. The fact that it's now being used for the alleged sale of artefacts found in the UK is interesting from a legal point of view.
Yeah, no, I think it is, and in that sense, speaking emotively from the standpoint of someone who loves this material, hypothetically this material, it is nice to see actually this sort of crime, if it has happened, is being taken seriously, and it'd be interesting to follow this case. Just briefly, I just want to just tag on the end, just before we wrap this up. There's some news also this month from Pembrokeshire, where a quote treasure hunter has unearthed a quote Celtic chariot in blah 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 in Pembrokeshire. Yes, there you go. Of course, Pembrokeshire treasure hunter, and this chariot coming to our attention actually is a good example of this material being treated in the way that it is abiding by the law, and therefore people can benefit. Everyone can benefit from the learning of the material of the the learning. And so I'm just trying to. It's all this use of the word allegedly. This is not hypothetical. This is real. So
we're no longer talking about the
so
chariot.
In this instance, sorry, this is a great example of that pathway being adhered to. And so people are able to benefit from the context and the actual careful excavation of the artefact, and the implication of it. Actually, it's even being touted as being one of the earliest, if not well, one newspaper said the first ever Celtic chariot burial. Well, okay, that's unsubstantiated, and you can't substantiate that. But this is a great example of actually, if you do it right, everyone benefits, and so we'll put a link to that below. But also, I'd just like to say, just to wrap up, really, this ongoing case. As the newspaper here says, the group of men were given unconditional bail at a pre-trial review, and that will take place on the March the 15th. No, sorry, a pre-trial review will take place on the March the 15th at Worcester Crown Court. West Mercia Police said due to the complexity of the investigation, the force had enlisted the help of multiple agencies, including both local and national archaeological authorities and experts from the British Museum. So, interesting stuff.
It's also worth quoting Judge Tyndall, who sat on, for the case, who told the court, clearly this is a complicated case, and he told the defendants, each of you will have time with your lawyers to discuss the case. For the moment, the next hearing you must attend is your trial on September the 30th, 2019. If you fail to attend, the trial will go on in your absence.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. So we've managed it. We managed not to break any broadcasting laws. We're not going to get in trouble.
I hope so.
Brilliant. So I'll just say once again, allegedly. Okay. So so moving on.